Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And this is the weekly pulse check, taking a look at what's happening in automation and AI news. Michael, there's a lot going on as usual. Let's go ahead and dive right in. The first article is from MSN.com. It's titled, "It's known as the list, and it's a secret file of AI geniuses." Now, the list, as the title implies, is a compilation of the most talented engineers and researchers in AI that Mr. Mark Zuckerberg himself has spent months putting together after his latest AI release fell flat. And as everyone now knows and is watching in the headlines, he's building a super intelligence lab with the best and brightest minds that are in this list. He is recruiting them and throwing gobs and gobs of money at them. And Michael, before I let you give your opinion on this, have you been contacted? Are you on the list? Or
I was assuming you were on the list. I didn't make the list.
I'm on I'm on zero list out there, maybe the naughty list, that Santa keeps. But so Michael, break it down for us. Tell us more about the list.
As you mentioned, the list is this secretive compilation of very, very bright individuals who are very skilled in their AI prowess. So I think if you look at the basics behind it, from what we know, and again, the list is secret, but the idea behind it is these are PhDs from elite schools, usually in their 20s or 30s. So, which is probably why we're not on it, because we're just out of that age range. That's just
the only reason.
Over that.
That's the
only reason. Probably the only reason we are outside of it. But like you mentioned, Zuckerberg is very, very interested in bringing these talented folks in. I know in a previous episode, we had talked about this $100 million kind of bounty to be able to bring these folks in. Not everybody's getting that, but some of them are getting real close to it as they're negotiating with both their own companies that they're trying to maybe use this as a leverage to stay there, but also within this concept of their interview process to do this. But what's very interesting to me is that the way that this is approached is such a cloak and dagger type of thing. Part of the article talked about, the way these companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and the one with Safe Superintelligence, the candidates are asked to put their phones in a Faraday cage to block the cellular and Wi-Fi signals. And because these folks are just concerned about this stuff. And Anthropic was talking about worried that their workers and their researchers would be targets of foreign espionage. So we're getting to the point now where this whole AI arms race is literally that. People are looking at how can we get the best and brightest, make sure they're contained within our organization to do the best for us, but also to protect them from the rest of the world and the potential threats that may exist there. So again, very, very different approach to IT that we have not seen this for a very long time, where there's such a demand for a very specific talent, bringing in board. So, and we talked about this earlier, a lot of these folks are in their 20s and 30s. One of the highest ones would be this Alexander Wang. His company, they wanted to buy his company, Scale AI, and they couldn't do that. So they bought a stake in his company and hired him directly for $14 billion. And this guy's 28 years old. And I don't know about you, at 28 years old, I don't think I could have counted 14 billion at that point, but it's amazing how these folks are getting such astronomical valuations so early in their career, honestly. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, it's amazing. So to sum it all up, this list contains the best and the brightest, and Mark Zuckerberg personally is very interested in hiring folks for Meta.
Yeah, one other interesting data point on Alexander Wang. He grew up in New Mexico, as the son of Chinese immigrant physicist at Los Alamos National Laboratory.
I'm guessing his parents probably left those physics books at home and he just kind of slept on them, and all that information just absorbed through his pillow.
Yeah. Yeah. So the knock list from Mission Impossible, that's what came to mind for me. The famous scene where Tom Cruise comes down from the ceiling and he's like an inch or two from the floor. We should send him in to Zuckerberg's home and retrieve this list, and then think of what he could get for that if he sold that to all the other big tech companies around the globe. So there's an idea for you.
There we go.
All right. Well, moving on to article number 2, which is related to article number 1. This is from Bloomberg, and the title is Apple Loses Top AI Models Executive to Meta's Hiring Spree. So in what is being called the most significant departure in Apple's AI ranks since the company started working on Apple Intelligence a few years ago, Ruming Pang, sorry about that if I got that wrong, the top executive in charge of AI models at Apple, has been hired away by Meta. So break this one down for us, Michael.
Yeah, so obviously Ruming was probably on the list. Based on what they're saying here is that his pay package was worth tens of millions of dollars. So maybe he didn't get the full 100 million, but he probably got really close to it based on the fact that they pulled him away from Apple. So as we look at this, it's yet another one where Apple, which has been behind for quite a while, and it's no secret. They even know it. This is no secret that they're behind.
Right.
They're seeing this as another big blow to them, as the fact that they tried to get their Apple Intelligence off the ground. People had great high hopes for it, especially with the hardware that they're releasing to be able to support it in their phones and their iPads and their M-class processors. So we look at all this stuff and they're really prepared to move forward with this. Unfortunately, for whatever the reasons are internally, they haven't made the strides that other organizations like Anthropic and OpenAI and Microsoft and others have made. So we start looking at what's going on. This is a big blow for them, losing such a big talent to a competitor like Meta, who's no doubt going to put their intelligence to work in Meta's framework. So when it comes to what this means for Apple, this may accelerate some of the discussions they've had with other firms about incorporating perhaps Anthropic into their own Apple Intelligence. But again, things move fast, right? We've got this things change so quickly from day to day even. So it'd be interesting to see how Apple recovers from this. But they have other folks that are taking his place, Ruming's place. But the issue is that, they probably weren't on the list for some particular reason.
Yeah.
So you pull away the best and the brightest out of Apple. Others will try to fill their shoes, but it really becomes a challenge because they are so far behind. They need a jump start to be able to get back in the game.
Yeah. I mean, it is surprising to me, though, when you compare it to the people that Meta has hired away already, right? We mentioned Alexander Wang from Scale AI. They also got the CEO from GitHub. They got a key researcher from OpenAI. They got another key person from Anthropic. And Apple has been a literal no-show on the AI front. I mean, they have really, really struggled with getting Apple Intelligence off the ground. And recently they've been, as the article mentioned, they've been looking at exploring third-party models to integrate with the iPhone from OpenAI or Anthropic. And that's apparently caused morale issues within the Apple team. So I think this guy, I'm sure, is on the list for a good reason. And Zuckerberg figures that, despite Apple's progress, he's got something to bring to the table. And that's why he went after him. But yeah, I just, I didn't see Apple people as necessarily being top of mind with who, Meta was pursuing. And certainly to date, they haven't pursued anyone from Apple. So yeah, we'll see what happens with this who's list of top people from virtually all of his competitors now that are now working, under one umbrella. Interesting days ahead to see what comes out of Meta.
Yeah, I agree. Good. But Apple is a competitor globally from an access point perspective. So
very true.
No matter what Apple does, it will make a splash because of their install base. I mean, you have billions of people who have iPhones. So rolling out any kind of Apple Intelligence where it is run locally on the phone is going to be a big deal. And so maybe that's why it's taking Apple so long to do this, because they are trying to do this on their platform, which is a handheld. Yeah. And to be able to get the kind of response and the kind of experience that Apple users are used to, I think they're being a little more cautious. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily behind overall. I think they're behind in the fact that they haven't made the splash that everyone expected them to at this point in time. And that's where I think when they start looking at outside models to be able to bring in, they may be able to get a little more ahead of the game if they are able to get those folks to help them with their platform.
I just ordered my new iPhone 16, so I hope they make a splash soon. Okay, the next article, which relates to two of Meta's competitors, OpenAI and Microsoft. This is from Analytics India magazine, and it's titled, "When AGI Becomes Real, Microsoft may lose its $13 billion bet." So this is referring to the AGI clause that Microsoft and OpenAI agreed to, which basically says when AGI occurs, Microsoft could lose access to OpenAI's most advanced models. And this feature was put in there to ensure, or to preserve, I should say, nonprofit control in the event of AGI. Now, Microsoft, having invested $13 billion, certainly sees continued access as critical, especially with rivals like Google accelerating and maybe now Meta as well. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on this article?
So, this concept of if OpenAI achieves AGI, and I'll talk about that in a second, then there's these clauses that allow the Microsoft to be cut out. And so that's one aspect of it. Now, going back to what the world may have thought at one time AGI was, which is like self-aware, autonomous, and artificial intelligence. Yeah. That's what the general definition used to be for, it still is for what AGI is, but in a very narrow context of what this means inside of the contract between OpenAI and Microsoft. It's actually, they're based on a leaked document, is linked to having an AI system generating $100 billion in profit. So if in fact, their AI system can generate $100 billion in profit, Microsoft still owns a portion of the organization, which would then allow them to capitalize on the profits that were being made by the AGI system within OpenAI. So even though there may be an issue of, well, they invested $13 billion so far. So $13 billion into OpenAI from Microsoft. But if an AI system from OpenAI can generate $100 billion in profit, that would more than offset, and even with Microsoft's percentage, more than offset the investment that they put forth. So I'm guessing, again, based on this here, there's a back and forth on it. I don't see it as a loss for Microsoft. I see it as a huge gain for OpenAI if, in fact, they can get to that point. And of course, that if is still the big question.
Yeah. Well, both sides seem to be playing it cool, acting like there's really no tension, everything's great. But apparently apparently, OpenAI is starting to distance itself a little bit operationally. They're starting to use some Google Cloud products instead of Azure. And there's
some reasons why they'd want to do that too, because and not to say that they want to get away from Microsoft, but they want to reduce their potential linkage to a point where
Yeah.
another vendor could control what happens within OpenAI, within their environment. So it's totally understandable. And then it extends beyond just the cloud, segment of this. It also includes the processor section. So, we all know, the world knows that NVIDIA controls that market right now.
Yeah.
But OpenAI has expressed a lot of interest in working with Google, not necessarily from their cloud perspective, but from their GPU perspective. So their tensor processing units are direct competitors to NVIDIA. Now they have a different profile altogether, but the reality is that this would help OpenAI then to, again, further segregate or protect or insulate from potential vendor issues if, for example, NVIDIA decides to hike their prices 500% for OpenAI. They would have an alternative that they can go to be able to protect their business model. So again, I think in my mind, it's prudent business in what they're doing. And so it doesn't necessarily reflect any souring tensions between the two or anything. It really is a good business decision for them to say, listen, we're getting too heavy on one business risk here. And for them, this makes sense to make that transition.
Certainly. Okay, our final article, and this one's very interesting. It's from West Virginia News. We go to
that's another one you must subscribe to that one, because I certainly don't.
We scoured into the earth for the best articles, the most relevant, no stone unturned. I mean, the last one was from Analytics India.
Analytics India.
This one's from West Virginia News, and the title is Alpha Schools Announce Rapid Nationwide Expansion Through Strategic Partnership with Guidepost Montessori. Now, there's a lot packed in there. The real essence of this article is about Alpha School and the fact that it's expanding very quickly. So what is Alpha School? This is a chain of 3 private schools, 2 of which are in Texas, one's in Florida, that offer 2 hours of academic learning each day using AI tutors, while the rest of the day is dedicated to developing life skills. And this is pretty new. And in fact, I went back and looked at when they opened, and I can't remember it's not that long ago that they opened these schools, and they're, from their vantage point, having enough success that they are going to open up 8 more campuses this fall. And Michael, you should be glad to know there's one in your hometown that's coming, and there's one in my hometown.
I see that.
So
I see that.
Too bad we don't have kids that are school age anymore.
Actually, it's not too bad that we don't have kids that are at age and kind of.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. So what do you think about Alpha School and the fact that they brought this very new, very radically different flavor of education forward? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've talked with a bunch of different folks, professors and other folks that are in the field about education and the change that needs to happen from the earliest ages. And from this Alpha School, they start K through 3 is their first study. So you start talking about having early education on AI. I'm not sure how much earlier you can get, right? This is right out of the gate. You're getting these kids to learn something different. Now, having the 2 hours of academics a day and then the life skill piece, I'm hoping that part of that life skill piece is actually going outside to play outside in the sunshine, like kids used to do back in the day. But that'd be something that would be interesting to find out more about. I really applaud this approach because you and I both know that the current educational system was developed in the early 1900s to really support the development of factory workers. And folks who are able to get in those kind of skills where they're able to follow rules and be able to go and do very specific activities within that realm. And as we do know right now, the world has changed. So factory work, while it's important, and we have a lot of activity happening within the factory space, the reality is that jobs are not only factory related. We have many industries where there is no factory. And part of that requires these collaborative kind of engagements, allowing workers to interact with each other and now with AI in ways that you could never think of before. So if kids don't understand this by the time they get to junior high and high school into college, into their master's degrees, their PhD degrees. If we start missing some of those kinds of early opportunities, there's going to be a more difficult transition as they get to those ages to understand how best to interact with the world. Because once they graduate out of their undergraduate or out of high school even, the jobs that are available to them require these kinds of skills. So starting early to help them gather steam and understand what this really is all about and how to work collaboratively together, as well as collaboratively with an AI platform, will definitely support this new paradigm of how work is being accomplished, both in white collar and in blue collar work.
Yeah.
So I think this is a fantastic thing. Again, this is a very small subset. Obviously, they say preschools right now. They're expanding a little bit more. They were founded in 2016. So obviously, even within the past, 9 years, there's been a lot of changes. And even go back to the past 3 years, there's been a massive amount of changes with AI.
Yeah.
So getting into education and bringing this forward, they're likely going to have to change their educational methods frequently just to keep up with the changes in the market space.
Yeah. And I don't think you mentioned it, but this school was started by a woman named Mackenzie Price, who graduated from Stanford with a psychology degree. And she founded it with her husband. A couple of things I read that are, I wouldn't say controversial, but they're just causing people to kind of think twice about this alpha school. First of all, very expensive. I think it's maybe K per year or something like that. That's what one source said. And then also the fact that it's so new that there hasn't been any form of independent certification or testing to determine how these kids going through alpha school, how do they compare to kids that are going through the more normal or routine, I should say, educational system that we have today. I'm sure all that will happen in time. But yeah, to me, it's just fascinating that AI has found its way into education as quickly as it has, and that it's these educators or psychologists that are now educators have been able to condense it down to 2 hours and then complement it with life skills training. I'd love to learn more about it, and perhaps we'll have Mackenzie Price on the podcast soon to unpack this for us. That would be a really good show. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the weekly Pulse Check. Remember, we have another podcast produced every week that features a guest. This week, we had a customer who came on the show. So please check that out if you will. And otherwise, we will see you back on the next Pulse Check. Bye for now.